So Tulsi Gabbard finally announced she's quitting the Democratic Party. And obviously, everybody saw this coming. I'm glad she's come out and announced it. I'm glad she's calling out what she is calling out. But I'm just going to come out and say it before we get into all the news. I think it's too little too late. I'm a big fan of Tulsi, obviously. I supported her in her presidential run. But too little too late. The bigger impact would have been if in the 2020 race, she came out and said exactly what she's saying now. Instead, she endorsed Joe Biden. And correct me if I'm wrong, but she was standing next to Biden during his inauguration, is what I was told. Is that what happened? So anyway, I think it's good that she's coming out. It's good that she's calling it out. And now a bunch of Republicans have come out and said more are going to come out and say the same thing. But, it does feel a little bit late. So we'll talk about that. That seems to be the big news. Republicans are cheering for this. We have a couple other big stories. Republicans are suing the Biden administration for collusion with big tech and censoring people's speech on social media. That's big for obvious reasons. And then a really crazy story. Elon Musk is reportedly turning off Starlink in parts of Ukraine after talking with Vladimir Putin. And now they're claiming, Vice has published a story that Elon Musk talked with Putin beforehand, which Elon Musk is saying is fake news, but it's all just getting absolutely insane. So we got to talk about this. And I want to talk a lot about people who are leaving the Democratic Party. And I think the big issue here is the Democratic Party has become the party of the wealthy elites. Conservative news outlets say it, moderate news outlets say it, leftist news outlets say it, and even Democrat establishment news outlets say it. So at what point do people just recognize Tulsi's right when she says it's a cabal of warmongering woke elites? So we'll talk about all that. But before we get started, my friends, head over to timcast.com to become a member and support our work directly. As a member, you'll get access to the uncensored members only show. We're going to have one of those up for you tonight at 11 p.m. You don't want to miss it. They sometimes get a little spicy. We swear a lot, but it's good fun, not really family friendly. And you'll be supporting our journalists directly. So everybody who's writing stories all day, every day, they rely on you as members supporting our work. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Joining us to discuss this and so much more is Kathy Barnette.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming. Who are you?
Oh, wow. Who am I?
Who are you?
I am a mom, a wife, and I love my country. Most people would know me. I just finished a brutal, very competitive senatorial race in the primary for Pennsylvania. And now I am looking for every opportunity to continue to push my values.
Right on. Well, thanks for coming. This should be a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
We've got Luke Rudkowski, of course.
Hey guys, my name is Luke Rudkowski of wearechange.org, and today I am wearing a Venn diagram of where we are as society, highlighting 1984, Brave New World, and of course Fahrenheit 451, highlighting pretty much how we're screwed. You can celebrate our screwing by going and getting the shirt on thebestpoliticalshirts.com, because you do. I'm here. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm also wearing a We Are Change shirt, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Luke.
You are,
this
yes.
is one of
you
yours,
are,
isn't it? Attention is a hell of a drug, and then it's got your social media apparati
as pills.
And I mean, really, like slot machines, they're just programming our brains with this addiction quality. I like the shirt. It's topical. I was wearing it. Figured I'd shout it out.
Thank you.
Crossland, in case you didn't know.
Right on. And of course, we have Serge pressing all the buttons.
Hey guys, I am here. I got a comment that was low energy yesterday, so I'll try and up the energy today.
Oh, wicked.
We've got to get like caffeine powder and pour it in his drink right before the show. And then it's like, guys, I'm here. I'm Serge. Yeah, let's get it.
Ready, guys.
I'm surging. Dude, that joke's probably been made before.
Yeah, I feel like everyone's heard these jokes before, but then again, I have to realize it's me who's heard all these jokes before, not everyone else. So if you got new ones, please throw them in the chat. Let's see what you got.
Or we can lean into it and you can sit back with your eyes half closed and be like, sup?
Yeah, I won't be the only one getting the drug comments on the YouTube channel.
Okay. Nice hair, by the way. Did I mention that last night?
Yeah, that's right. I lost. What was it? One of the comments was I lost a fight with a surge protector. That's a new one.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
that is, because it's your name,
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Right.
All right, let's jump into this first story from Timcast.com. Tulsi Gabbard quits Democratic Party citing wokeness and anti-white racism, calls the party existential threat to America, and urges other party members to join her. That's the gist of the story. She gave a speech saying, nonetheless, I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party. It's now under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers driven by cowardly wokeness who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms enshrined in our Constitution, and who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police, who protect criminals at the expense of the law. Well, that's good news as far as I'm concerned. But I do think she should have come out and stated this a long time ago.
Absolutely, right? I mean, finally, welcome
Yeah.
to the nightmare that the overwhelming majority of us have been living for, for quite some time, probably on steroids since 2016. So, I don't know, a little too late. I don't know. But I do believe that it is indicative of what will happen to the Democrat Party. I think more and more you would see a lot of people, sane, reasonable people who are waking up to the reality of how the left has taken over the Democrat Party.
This is one of the craziest things that I've been hearing a lot of behind the scenes. Something's been happening recently where people are snapping and there's like mass red pilling going on. I'm hearing stories of like, from friends, and this is not like celebrities or famous people, just like, hey, my friend was all of a sudden one day just came to me and said that, what's going on with war? What's going on with World War III? Joe Biden's doing all of this. And people are going from in the dark to red pill just like very, very quickly. And I wonder if a lot of it is when the news says nuclear war may be coming, you start to pay attention. And then when you do, you go, hey, wait a minute, this Biden guy's actually really bad.
I don't know if it's nuclear war. I think it's gas prices. I think it's food shortages.
That's a good point.
I think it's those things. For a lot of people, I live in a very woke, quote unquote, kind of area right outside of Philadelphia, the third largest county in the state of Pennsylvania, the second wealthiest county in the state of Pennsylvania. These people are very woke. But however, when you look at a lot of these people are beginning to take that red pill, that they're watching what happened to their children. I think education is going to be a really big issue for a lot of those suburban moms.
I was thinking that COVID, the lockdowns or the shutdowns rather, and then the riots that didn't have much of a military response or police response was kind of an opening. But I think you're right that it's gas prices.
I think it's gas prices.
Yeah, I think, my perspective is like, why would a young person, and then, obviously the war that's probably my personal bias. You bring up gas prices and I'm like, oh yeah, you're probably right. Some minimum wage skateboarder guy who's trying to get enough gas mustered up to go to the skate park is probably saying, what the is going on? Yeah. And then he's looking it up and being like, why did Biden shut down the Keystone Pipeline? Now you got to pay to guess.
I personally think it's the Great Reset. I personally think it's the Build Back Better agenda, which coalesces into all of these things when it comes to not only actively being a warmonger, but also destroying the economy, which I think is being done deliberately here. But to go back into this topic, it does seem like the Democratic establishment party is a sinking ship. They're expected to lose a lot of seats in this upcoming election. And if we remember, Tulsi Gabbard, she was seen as a rising star a few years ago until she questioned the Syrian war, until she actually said, hey, maybe we shouldn't be warmongers, maybe we shouldn't do regime change, maybe we shouldn't be financing ISIS and Al-Qaeda inside of the Middle East and launching a war on terror, which of course is being financed by our own money. And when she pushed back against a lot of the war policies, that's when the bigger attacks against her happened by her own party.
Sort of. It was really when she came out against Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
That was when the machine went like,
don't do that.
Yeah.
But she was, again, she was the first combat veteran female running for president of the United States. You would think just basically on those merits, the Democratic Party would lose their mind and overwhelmingly go support her. No, absolutely not. They didn't believe in her. They questioned her. They called her a Russian asset. Right. They criticized her every step of the way because she dared to say, hey, all these lies, all these bigger banker bailouts, all the ways that you're being screwed over in America is not okay, and I'm going to stand up against it. She did successfully. Her smackdown of Kamala Harris is absolutely epic. And she has done a lot of good when it came to pushing the Overton window, starting conversations and debates, even though she was anti-gun, endorsed Joe Biden and the World Economic Forum.
Anti-nuclear power.
And the World Economic Forum even liked her so much that they put her up as representatives. Now she, of course, along with the eye patch guy, Dan Crenshaw, say that they were put on there without their kind of consent. But regardless, still, the World Economic Forum said, hey, this is a good person we like, we want to promote.
She endorsed Joe Biden.
Yeah.
I mean, look, how are you going to come out and say the party's been taken over by a cabal of warmongers when you endorsed one of the principal warmongers? Don't tell me Tulsi didn't know about what Joe Biden was doing in the early in the early 2010s with the Iraq War. His brother's getting these lucrative contracts. There's no way she is unaware of what Hunter Biden was accused of doing with the laptop stuff. So I can respect if, behind the scenes she's trying to be tactful and try and still remain in the Democratic Party to try and bring people into it who might actually be sane as to and cognizant of what's going on. But I kind of just feel like it's 2022. We're 2 months out, not barely, from just about 2 months out from 2023. And Tulsi's coming out saying, I'm quitting the Democratic Party. And it's just like, yo, if you came out in October of 2020 and said all of this exact same stuff, like, I will not endorse a warmonger like Joe Biden, we may have gotten Donald Trump and we would not be at war right now.
Yeah. And she's also a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, which should spark up a lot of eyebrows. But there's a lot of other scuttlebutt behind the scenes talking about her potentially joining Donald Trump, her potentially joining DeSantis and running with them for these upcoming presidential elections. So there's a lot of scuttlebutt about her positioning herself to be more politically relevant and be able to run on a party ticket that would galvanize a lot of the working class people. Because at the end of the day, even though, World Economic Forum endorsed, CFR member endorsed Joe Biden, anti-gun, she still does talk about a lot of important issues that do push the Overton window, that do start conversations that I think are important.
All right, I'm going to say this. Everybody deserves to evolve. Even, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, he supported defunding police. Today, he says it's a losing idea and it's a bad idea, and he's right. And I commend him for realizing the mistake he made previously and now coming out and saying, you know what, defund the police is a bad idea. I still think it's important to point out Tulsi Gabbard was very, very wrong in 2020. In this article from NBC News, and Tulsi Gabbard ends presidential run, endorses Biden. She said, it's clear that Democratic primary voters have chosen Vice President Joe Biden to be the person who will take on President Trump in the general election. I'm confident that he will lead our country guided by the spirit of aloha, respect, and compassion, and thus help heal the divisiveness that has been tearing our country apart. In her announcement, she noted that she'll continue her military service. But anyway, to go back to that quote, she was wrong. Joe Biden has in that speech where he came out and called MAGA Republicans an existential threat to this country, did the exact opposite. So this is just Tulsi being very, very, very wrong. And if she came out back then and said Joe Biden is divisive, Joe Biden is a threat to this country, and we should not be supporting him, she wouldn't even have to come out and endorse Trump. She can just be like, I will not endorse a man who was vice president to an administration that blew up children in the Middle East. And for what reason? Couldn't tell you. War, empire, regime change. She'd probably just say regime change, but respectable. Instead, she actually, and this blew my mind, endorsed Joe Biden while campaigning on ending regime change war. It's like, what do you think the Obama administration was doing with Joe Biden there as vice president?
And now here we are closer to war than ever. Sorry, go ahead.
No. But that's what's expected, right? Once you are not going to win a particular race, then the party expects you to just line up and do as you're told. Just take one for the team. And a lot of people do that without of just doing what others expect them to do. I find it to be very inauthentic. And authenticity was, a huge part of. It was something that I was very intentional about at the very beginning of my race, is to remain true to those values that brought me into the Republican Party when I was a junior in college from the Democrat Party, to be authentic to those values that would cause me to want to run in the first place, because I earnestly believe we're about to lose our country. I don't believe that that's hyperbole. I believe things have gone very wrong, and we need something very different. So for her to come out and support Joe Biden in 2020, that is what is expected of people. And, and to be completely honest, that's what plastic politicians do. You get dragged through the mud, but then once it's all over, everyone expects you to shut up, line up, do as you're told, and just go on. But I wanted to go back to something you said earlier about, the fact that, that she's a woman, she's this, she's that, she checks off all the boxes. The Democrat Party should have been in love with her. That only works if you also follow the narrative. But if you have your own mind, your own thoughts, and your own opinion, I don't care how many boxes you check off. I mean, look at me. I'm black. I'm a woman. I grew up dirt poor on a pig farm in southern Alabama underneath a rock. You would think the Democrat Party would be like, we love her. You would think the Republican establishment would be like, praise the Lord. Now we have a fighting chance to stoke some enthusiasm in our party. But if you don't follow the narrative, And the script, it doesn't matter how many boxes you check off. They don't want to have anything to do with you.
Put it simply, if you're not a controlled puppet, you're not going to get any play and support by the establishment. But I also wanted
On
to
either side.
I wanted to ask
Or in
you
Hollywood,
what your understanding of politics. Do you think this move is highlighting maybe something bigger, maybe a bigger move between a potential 2024 run? Do you think something's happening behind the scenes? What do you think Tulsi is doing here?
No one does anything in this industry because it's the right thing to do. If you think people in this industry do things because it's the right thing to do, solely because it's the right thing to do, that's not how this works.
Yeah, I don't want to call it a publicity stunt, but she coincided this announcement with the announcement of her new show, the Tulsi Gabbard show, and
on
an episode.
Fox? Is it on Fox?
I'm not sure.
I think it's on YouTube.
And an episode of Joe Rogan's podcast that she just went on. I just saw an ad for that today. So this was very planned. That she's probably been thinking about this for a long time.
But she has been taking, little red pills after little red pills after little red pills for some time now, right? Now, I don't believe. Now, a lot of Republicans, we get excited when people throw us little bones. Oh, look, she's moving to our side. So I never thought she was a conservative or really a Republican, but I have seen over some period of time of her taking these little red pills. And so now she finally took enough of them where she's saying, I'm leaving the Democrat Party. I think that's going to be endemic of what we see happen across a lot of, those particular communities where Democrats have taken people for granted, their vote for granted. Other than the black community, I think the black community would probably be the very last people to come off the Democrat plantation. I think you're going to see more and more Hispanics leave the Democrat Party. I think we're already experiencing that. And I think there are a lot of sane Democrats who are going to come off. Unfortunately, I think those who share my hue and complexion, I think we're probably going to be one of the last.
Why do you think it is that you said the black community would be the last to leave the Democratic Party? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, even during the Republican primary, I spent a lot of time in the black community. I spent a lot of time in Democrat-controlled communities. And we would bring our laptops with us every single time we were going to one of these communities. And we were actively changing people's registration from Democrat to Republican. One of the things I saw is that there is truly just a lack of awareness. I think things like gas prices brings it home to people's kitchen table, and now they're paying attention to it. But other than that.
Real quick, did you see that video out of Florida? Where the two black guys are looking at the gas tanker coming after the hurricane, and the guy's like, I'm voting for DeSantis, and I'm a Democrat. He brought the gas, is all that matters.
Let me tell you, when I walked into black communities, in 2020, when we were having all of these Black Lives Matter rallies, I was running for Congress. That was my first time jumping into the political fray. I'm now in a general election. I started attending Black Lives Matter rallies. No one would invite me. I would just walk up on stage, take the mic, and say, yeah, I'm black. What are you going to do about it? And I would say, my name is Kathy Barnette. I'm a Republican. Now get out of your emotions. And I would begin to talk to black people about right where they're standing. Black people want exactly what everyone else wants. We want safe streets. We want good schools. We want good jobs, right? We don't want to defund the police. Black people never came up with that idea. A white Democrat living behind a gated community came up with the idea of defund the police. Black people never come up with that. The problem is there's a litany of them, but one that we can control is the fact that Republicans don't go into those communities for a variety of reasons. We don't go in, we don't compete, we just leave it as a far gone conclusion that they're going to vote for Democrats. What I did during the primary this primary that I just went through is I started going into black communities, changing every single time, changing their voter registration from Democrat to Republican. They are open. It's just they're very unaware of the reality.
You mean you'd go in and talk to them about it, and then they would decide to switch?
And then they would decide, right. So I would go into these predominantly black communities, or I would go to an environment where I knew we were going to be bringing in a lot of black people who were Democrats, and I would stand up. Sometimes I would have 30 minutes to speak with them. The other 30 minutes, we would be changing voter registration from Democrat to Republican. American every single time. I would clear the room and I would get all of these people to change their voter registration. Why? I'm not going in plastic. I'm not going in with canned speeches. I'm talking about right where they're living. They want their children not to have to duck and dodge bullets just to get into their classroom. They want exactly what everyone else wants. We just got to go in and we have the more compelling story. We just have to have the nerve to go in and do it.
How did the white hipsters at the BLM rally respond to
Oh my God.
to you saying get out of your emotions?
Oh my goodness. Let me tell you, every single time I had my own rally outside, Black Lives Matter would show up every single time, and there was not one black person in the bunch. It is nothing. I mean, these are some of the most racist, and that's not a word I throw around at all. I'm very careful about it. But I found more resistance and more hate from these progressive leftists. I don't even want to call them progressive, just these leftist Democrats, trying to tell me what it means to be black. I mean, just very bold and very in your face. And I found them to be very nasty. So
I too. I found them to be very nasty.
Racism's so insidious because even when people are like trying to give you compliments and be nice racistly, they're like, black people are so beautiful. Like, it's like, dude, leave the racism at the door. Talk to me like a person.
Yes.
But this is what the left does. There's a Yale study, which I'm sure you saw, right? That Democrats talk down. Actually, there's two different ones. One is Democrats as a political party. They lower their vocabulary level when speaking to minorities, and liberals in general talk down in the same way. Conservative politicians and conservatives don't do this.
Yeah.
So did you see that one from a few years ago?
Yes, I did.
I'm sure you've experienced it.
I think it was a couple of years ago. Yeah, let me tell you something. I mean, every time I walk into a room, they'd be like, "Oh, she speaks so well."
Oh my
Like, what do you-
God, come on.
You speak so well, right? I mean, I never saw anyone say that to another white person, but it was always kind of pointed at me. You speak English really well. Like, yeah, I'm an American.
Isn't that what Biden described Obama as?
Yes,
Right?
I think so.
he did.
I remember that.
Wow. Yeah, Biden said he went on and on about it.
I
That was
know,
crazy.
right? Like really good tea.
But I think Biden explicitly said about him being black.
Yeah, I think I'm looking it up right now. One of the texts he said was that he was articulate and clean.
Yes,
So-
that's the word. You're
Yes.
so articulate. And but that's just a part of the issue. I mean, like that's just, that's something you can just kind of give people a pass on. But when you look at the policies of the Democrat Party, every time I want to drive, again, I'm my county of Bucks, Philadelphia, and when I want to go into center city of Philadelphia, I take the street versus the freeway, just so I can get familiar with the different areas, and it just really rubs me raw when I know I just drove into the black community. You drive from one community to another community to another community, and you get into the black community, and it's trash everywhere. It's liquor stores everywhere. It's mattresses, multiple mattresses just sitting on the sidewalk. It's very irritating. And so Democrats' policies, they are showing up in some of the most horrific ways, primarily in Democrat, in black communities.
I will not read that quote from Joe Biden. I'm sorry. You guys, someone else that gets to read it. I'm not reading it. Who wants to read it?
I'll read it. I mean,
So read the full thing that Biden famously said.
Biden famously said in the New York Observer, I gotta get that glare off the screen. Quote, I mean, you got the first, Biden says, mainstream African-American who's articulate and bright, says Joe Biden, and clean and a nice looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook, man. What's the storybook? That a black guy's cleaned up? Joe,
I
you
respect-
racist freak. I
respect-
love you, man. I'm just saying, leave the racism at the door.
I respect how you kept breaking the quote up by saying Biden says.
I don't want
Biden
to think I'm the
says.
one saying this goofy.
Yeah, you don't get that clipped out.
But I mean, it's amazing that he said that. He had to apologize for it. But this, to me, scientific studies showing that Democrats talk down to black people, that they use lower grade language. Like that says everything.
Well, listen, Democrats hated me. And the reason why they hate me is because I don't need them. I don't need them to pay my bills. I don't need them to help me with anything. All I need them to do is get out of my way. Right. And so, I mean, and that was the reality. That was my reality, my experience of just running all across Pennsylvania. But again, that was when I was in a general election in 2020. Now I came into a primary election in 2022, and now I'm running as a Republican in a Republican primary. And let me just tell you, the issue is not just with the Democrat Party. We do have this thing called a uniparty in our country, and Democrats cannot do half the things they're doing if Republicans in the establishment, the elites within the Republican Party, the machine, was not complicit.
Right. Don't play ball.
What do you think about Democratic policy has altered the way you were saying when you get to the black community of Philadelphia that there's trash on the street, and what do you think policy wise has caused that specifically?
Yeah. It's a broken culture. I mean, and I would go into, again, these predominantly black communities, especially during the Black Lives Matter riots of 2020. And I would ask them, I mean, you would be hard pressed to find a Republican anywhere in leadership, right? The only ones who were in leadership in these predominantly black communities were Democrats. And so you can't look at Republicans and say, oh, it's your fault that my trash don't get picked up. It's your fault that we have these particular school systems that are failing time and time and time again. Which party is constantly saying they don't want school choice? They don't want to give parents the ability to take a voucher. And if your school is not competing and not providing your children what they need, then you have as a parent, because you know your child better, then you as a parent can take that voucher and then take your child to a school where your baby will succeed. Which party is working against that policy? Democrats are working against that.
So just to kind of bring things into highlight, I wanted to really get your perspective, because other than just failed Democratic policies, what do you think is mainly responsible for areas like Philadelphia, for predominantly black areas, to be in the current situation that they are right now?
Yeah.
What's the driving focus? Who's responsible?
Yeah. I mean, who's responsible? I mean, well, for me, I always start with myself, right? I mean, I was a Democrat. I grew up below the bottom rung of the economic ladder. I grew up on a pig farm in southern Alabama. I grew up in a home with no running water, no insulation, an outhouse in the back and a well on the side. When I say poor, we couldn't afford the other O. We were just po. But no one ever told me I was a victim, right? We didn't have much. But I saw my grandparents wake up early, go to bed late, taking care of their family, taking care of their community, right? And no one ever told me I was a victim. And so I went on to get an education. I went on to get married, to wait till I got married before I started having children. So you can learn these particular things. So before we start saying, oh, it's the white man's fault, or oh, it's that black man's fault, or oh, it's these people's fault, I always want to get the mirror and put it up in my own face and say, what can I do with my life? But now, once you get beyond that, right, because I can only control so much. I'm so grateful to God. I think it's going to become increasingly difficult for people who were like me, who find themselves the way I once was, underneath the rock. I think it's going to become increasingly difficult for those people to begin to climb their way out of that kind of poverty and create a new life for themselves. I believe the policies, when you listen to Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, talk about destroying demand in order to get inflation in line, what he means by that, the way you destroy demand is by destroying people's lives. And you destroy people's lives by forcing them to be fired, right? Or creating an environment where jobs are not hiring, but firing, right? And I think that kind of environment and that kind of mentality and leadership that we have today, who say instead of growing the economy by opening up oil and allowing ourselves to be energy independent, we don't have that kind of mentality. We have the kind of mentality that's leading this country that says we need to destroy demand by destroying jobs, right? And when you find someone like myself who, how do you get a job if there are no jobs, if there are no opportunities? So I think it's going to become increasingly difficult for people who find themselves at the bottom rung of the economic ladder to begin to create a new life for themselves.
When Tulsi Gabbard came out and said she was quitting the Democratic Party and that they're a cabal of elites and warmongers, I pulled up the Washington Examiner, conservative. Democrats are the party of the wealthy elites. Unheard, moderate, centrist. Democrats are the party of rich white elites. Then we pulled up Jacobin, socialist newspaper. Democratic Party keeps getting richer and whiter. If the right, the center, and the left are all saying the same thing, and it's still not enough for people to realize this is what the Democratic Party is. I then pulled up Vox.com, which is establishment corporate Democrat to the T. The Democrats have replaced the Republican Party as the party of the wealthy elites. How is it that there are people who still don't get it? That they still think that if you are poor and working class, vote for the rich people who don't care about you and want you to be cannon fodder. So I want to say this. There's a shout out to all of our good Gen Z fans. If you're Gen Z and you support the Democratic Party, then I'm proud to let you know that you will be prized cannon fodder when they reinstate the draft for their war against Russia. So congratulations. It will be you on the front lines. Now, if you are between the ages of 18 and 25, and realistically, we may be looking at a year or two out. So let's say 17 to 24. The best thing you can do right now, if you don't want to be forced to join the military, is probably oppose intervening in these foreign conflicts.
I was thinking about like 1930 Germany, and when the Nazi Party came into power, and a lot of the German people were just like, I don't like them, but I love Germany. I'm pro-Germany, so I'll support whoever's in charge at the moment. And I think a lot of people are like, I'm pro-America, so I support the president and this party. But like, you really have a duty to revolt against nasty corruption. I do think that Biden putting his son in Burisma, that Ukrainian oil company, is corrupt.
Putting his son there,
I mean, he could have told him. He could have said no.
Conflict of interest.
Yeah, maybe he didn't put him there. Maybe he didn't. But allowing that to happen is like, what in the hell?
Or not recusing himself from any dealings with Ukraine, being like, my son works for an energy company there, I can't be involved.
And the war stuff with like no backing down. It's like, if you don't find yourself supporting a government that wants to take you into a war, because there'll be you and your kids that have to die, it's not worth it.
Just to get back to the original conversation, because I think we were on some really good points here from the question that I asked that you kind of went on. And to answer your question, Tim, you know, a lot of the times when people are in poverty, they have a lot of things to figure out. They have a lot of problems. And then here come these politicians promising, hey, we're going to help you guys. Hey, we're going to give you this. We're going to make sure everything's free and everything's going to be handled. Everything's going to be glorious. And then, of course, they win the election. Then they're like, screw you. We don't even care about you. And then we see that pattern routinely every 4 years. And I think personally, to kind of add to what you were just talking about, I think globalization that destroyed this economy and took away a lot of American jobs, along with the destruction of the modern man and family units, is predominantly one of the biggest reasons why people are impoverished, why people are going to continue to be impoverished. And I think a lot of these policies are being done deliberately, in my opinion, with the subjugation of humanity.
I want to tack on, unlike 1930 Germany, a lot of people have woken up to the crap. Like you guys were saying earlier in the show, the red pilling of America's now with this tax hikes, and you're learning about the military industrial complex, the liberal economic order, all this like information that's available on because of the internet in a lot of ways. I think that people are able to not blindly follow the warmongering leader.
Yeah, so much more information.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, I'm kind of going back a little bit more. We're ping ponging over here, but you know, most people define poverty in dollars and cents, but they don't. But if curing poverty was nothing more than a stimulus check, then Black people, among all people, well, you know, all of our issues would be solved, right? When you begin to think about all the aid and all the government money, you know, that certain communities get. So if dollars and cents was all that was needed in order to cure poverty, then hey, it'd be, you know, it's simple and it would be over, because our government has given welfare to so many different groups of people. But it's more than that, right? Yeah. And it's a brokenness in culture, right? It's we're bankrupt in culture, and it's not just a Black thing any longer. I talk about it in my book that if you know, my book came out in 2020, and I was kind of putting out this clarion call that if we don't get our head out of the sand and pay attention to what our leaders are saying, this bankruptcy and poverty that we think are confined in certain communities are going to begin begin to spread outside of those communities and begin to impact our little bungalows, right? And that's exactly what we're beginning to see.
Yeah. I want to jump to this story from the Daily Mail. Biden administration sued for censoring free speech. Lawsuit accuses President Karine Jean-Pierre, Mary Poppins of disinformation, and slew of officials of a disturbing amount of collusion with social media firms to quash critical stories. Republican attorneys general of Louisiana and Missouri are behind the lawsuit. It names 67 government officials or entities as having worked hand in hand with social media companies to censor stories on elections, COVID, and the economy. They're seeking to depose key defendants and will ask a judge on Friday. This egregious attack on our First Amendment will be met with an equally full-hearted defense of the rights of the American people, Louisiana AG Landry said. So just a moment ago in the previous segment, Kathy, you were mentioning that, well, I guess the gist of the idea is people need to know what's really going on. They need to be able to challenge the politicians. They need to be able to understand what's happening in their communities. But now you have more and more evidence piling up that the government is actually working with big tech to make sure people can't know what's actually happening in their communities.
Yeah.
So when we talk about why it is that a poor person would keep voting Democrat, it's because they are being locked in. They're locked in a bubble where they can't get accurate information. It's becoming increasingly harder. Now, I do think, with all that being said, we are still winning this cultural battle. We're seeing, The Daily Show, Trevor Noah's quitting, CNN's in a death spiral, Brian Stelter's canceled. All of these awful narrative mongers, smear merchants, are being ousted, losing their positions of power and influence. And regular people are finding their voices through the internet. What we see here is the government desperate to make sure you don't know what's actually going on around you.
And that's a problem. That's a problem, right? Can you imagine if Trump had weaponized the FBI, the media, Facebook and Google, and how minds would be blown right now? Yeah. People's hair would be on fire to be running through glass pane windows, right? The world be coming to an end. But it's so un-American, and I believe it is just so very dangerous. Think about the first 5 rights of the First Amendment: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to, Lord, I'm forgetting because I'm on television right now, but freedom of speech, freedom of religion,
press,
freedom of the press, freedom to
mobilize. What's that?
No, not mobilize, but
peaceably assemble.
Peaceably assemble.
Peacefully assemble.
That's one form
and
of mobilization.
Redress of grievances.
Yes, exactly right. And now, but when you go, it's all 5 of them. But when you go down all 5 of them, you will see how this particular administration has just pounced on people's just basic fundamental rights, right? Freedom of speech. Go out there on Twitter and put in monkeypox and see what happens to you, right? Like, they're shutting all of that kind of conversation down. Talk about, COVID and the vaccines or any of those particular things. And there are certain sites that will shut your conversation down altogether.
Like, YouTube. Like YouTube.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I go figure. And so, and then you wonder why people are, when we were on the campaign trail for 13 months, we were traveling over 1,500 miles every single week, and we were going all across Pennsylvania. And I saw, and the people are just amazing. We have some of the most amazing people within the Republican Party, but I can assure you, people are stressed. People are like in little pressure cookers right now, right? And then when they want to express themselves and speak out and talk about the various issues that are concerning them, and now they're told, well, you can't. We're going to suppress. We're going to shadow ban. We're going to, boot you off altogether. That is not creating a healthy environment for our country. And that's just on social media. Now you begin to talk about, inflation and gas prices and what's going on, on the precipice of World War III. All of these particular pressures, it's a lot.
Yeah, I think the demoralization, it leads towards mental poverty. Like you were saying, you never felt like a victim growing up. And because of that, you were basically wealthy. You may not have had money. You don't need necessarily money to have a wealthy state of mind, friends and family, and love and desire to create.
I was loved. I was loved. I was cared for.
And because of that, you created something great.
Yeah.
And people that have no faith or that think that they're victims and are living that lifestyle, may tend towards destroying themselves or allowing themselves to be destroyed.
I mean, but think about it. If you're living in a culture where every time you turn around as a young black man, let's just say, as a young black straight man, let's just say, everywhere you turn, you're being told you're a victim. You're being told you're inferior. You're being told that, that because you have white skin, you have privileges that my brown skin does not provide me, that somehow my brown skin is barring me from a world that your white skin gives you access to. Can you imagine if that is your daily diet, morning, noon, and night, how you will show up in the world, right? And that is the narrative.
Regarding the censorship stuff, I feel like not that states have revolted for less, but that like if you pressure people living that they can't have normal conversations in their daily life, they're going to tell you to screw yourself and they're going to form their own government. And if 39 states in the United States told the federal government, no more. No. You're not going to censor us. We live free in our states. The problem is if state governments start censoring their own people, that's why we built a federal government, was to protect people from states overreaching on their citizens. So it's the first time we've been in this. Well, that's basically Shays Rebellion is an example of the Massachusetts government just imprisoning people at will, bringing in
the federal government can't actually pardon people for state crimes.
No, but it can send in federal troops to make sure that a state doesn't like the freeing
if it's
of
violating the Constitution.
Exactly.
If it's violating the federal Constitution.
Yeah. And this is kind of the first time in our history that we've had a situation where people feel like the federal government is infringing on their rights more than their states. And it's, I don't know, tenably, like Luke, you were saying you feel like it's like this order, this change of order. I'm not sure how you phrased it earlier. Maybe it's just inevitably the liberal economic order, the American-led rules-based international economy is fading away, and we're just seeing like the struggling death throes of a. But the thing is, that's not it, because it's us. It's the people of the United States.
No.
We're leading this thing.
The Uniparty, for the longest time, was an elite class. Look at the media. For the longest time, if you wanted to be a journalist, you had to come from a rich family. Because the companies were based in New York City, the big ones. And if you wanted to work there, you had to be an intern, meaning you weren't getting paid or you're getting paid very little. And how can you afford to live in New York City getting paid very little? Your parents paid your bills. Right. This was a well-known problem in the media industry, even up to 10 years ago. And it probably is still a problem in New York, though it's probably been alleviated to a certain degree. Now we're seeing that regular little old people can take a GoPro, put it on their monitor screen and talk for a few minutes and eventually grow that into a podcast where they have a voice. That's changing the game. And this means the establishment uniparty is losing that class-based control they've had for the longest time.
And they had tried to consolidate their power with the corporation legalities where you can like say, hey, you can't sue me. You can't take anything from me. You got to take it from that fake corporation I built. And then they can move their corporation offshore, have bank accounts offshore. And they're basically the oligarchs running the uniparty as this wealthy corporatist.
It's pretty simple here. Tyrants can't rule if they can't control information because people will speak out against their tyranny, and this is exactly what they're doing and what they've been doing. I've been screaming about this for many years now. People called me a conspiracy theorist. People called me a kook. People said I was insane. I was crazy. There's no way that the federal government is involved when it comes to censorship of big tech social media. They're private companies. They get to decide and do whatever they want themselves because they're private entities. Let the free market speak. And I was screaming on the top of my lungs, it is not a free market. It never was a free market. Intelligence agencies helped start up a lot of these major corporations. And on the other hand, who's playing with their phone right
it's
now?
Getting hot.
Was that you or me?
I think it was Kathy.
Put the phone down, ma'am. Pay attention. And truly, what is happening here is them saying, you know what? We're going to go after comedians, scientists, doctors, medical professionals, politicians. We don't care. We're just going to censor and shut everyone up for our own personal benefit because we want to control every aspect of this existence, including the thoughts in your head. And that right there is just too much power for any individual to have. They should be sued out of town. They should lose their positions of power because they were very irresponsible with it, and they're endangering all of us by trying to literally enact thought control.
So my concern is that even if they're sued and they are told legally you can't do it anymore, and they're like, okay, we'll stop. The private companies are private companies. They've got like the PRISM spy network. We know that they have like secret spying networks that they'll just do it anyway. I mean, that's my concern is like de facto rule. How do we really, you need encryption, you need decentralized communication sources. You want to say something?
Well, no, I was just thinking, a lot of what is happening, what will continue to happen is that activists will bypass the voting box and go straight to corporate boardrooms. It's this little thing called ESG, right? Environmental social governance. And it is simply a way for the government, for activists and some of those within the government who wants it. You can't get it passed in Congress. So you bypass the voting box and you go straight into the corporate boardrooms, and now we see these business elites like BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, and Coca-Cola and other companies that are using their leverage to force upon the American people different American values, right? And so you see that going on and on and on again. So now we're approaching the time when the federal government will not be so, big government and trying to impede upon your personal rights, or even trying to usurp the state government. They would just bypass all of that and use these large corporations. And that is what they're doing under ESG.
They also have a thing called impact investment, which is a big buzzword in 21st century investment.
Yes.
So they get corporations, they go to the board, they basically get the board to think a certain way, and then that's where they put their money, whether it's through charity or whatever, into events that they want to see happen, or people that they think will spread the message that they want them to spread. YouTubers, things like that.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. Like for example, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, the three of those asset managers, they manage over $22 trillion, right? And that is larger than than America's GDP. So they manage more money than the wealthiest country, America, right? And so that's a tremendous amount of influence. So when you look at just these three asset managers alone, they own 21% of Exxon stocks, and they leverage all of that buying power to go in to kick off three of their board members on Exxon's and replace them with three activist board members, right? And then once they take over the largest of all of the oil and gas companies, now they just use them as poster children as they go to Chevron and Mobil and others and say, if you don't do what we tell you to do when it comes to stop drilling, or to adopt more, or to try to transition faster away from oil and into renewable energy, then we're going to do to your company what we just did to the largest company, Exxon. That's exactly what they did. And so they are literally not only destroying the fiduciary responsibility between the manager who manages the individual investor's money. So they're messing up that relationship, because if you're managing my money, your only focus should be on maximizing my shareholders' wealth. But if you're no longer focused on maximizing my shareholders' wealth, but now pushing a particular narrative, now you're changing traditional American values and you're bypassing the voting box to do it.
That's my concern with doctors too, because it used to be a doctor to patient. It was like the investor to the investment manager, and that was all they cared about, was the health of the patient. Now you've got, I don't know if BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard are on the boards of hospitals as well, of insurance agencies. I wouldn't be surprised to find out.
Yes, they are.
And so is it confirmed that they will?
Scope 3 is something that you find in Chevron, for example. And so what Scope 3 is, which is what these activists are pushing, it forces private companies to become the big brother of every other company in their supply chain, right? So if you're Chevron, you should just be focused on finding investments to drill more oil, especially in a time that we find ourselves right now. But instead, Scope 3 says not only do you need to be green new energy compliant, but that insurance company that's selling you insurance to protect your workers, you need to now play big brother to them and make sure that they too are moving towards doing everything they need to do to be clean energy.
You're absolutely right on the money, and I would even say it goes even bigger than private corporations. It happens to other countries like Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, of course, we're going along with the ESG score, implementing the ESG policies. The World Economic Forum was like, they're doing great and amazing. They're going to be the biggest and brightest stars in the developing world. And
Look at you now.
what happened to Sri Lanka? They were
Yeah.
deliberately destroyed by the policies that they were extorted and manipulated to implement that pushed diversity, all these issues, diversity, wokeness, gender equality, all of that. And then what happened when they put in all the green policies and all the policies that, of course, it wrecked and utterly destroyed their country. And this wasn't an accident. This was done deliberately. And now the same policies that were tested in Sri Lanka, that were tested on the corporations, are being implemented globally and are being introduced here in the United States and will topple the Western world from what I'm seeing.
It wasn't a mistake.
No, it wasn't.
Everything we're seeing in Sri Lanka with the food riots and the gas shortages and all that, that's the intended consequence. They outright are saying it. They're telling farmers not to farm. They're saying, the farming is bad for the environment, so don't do it, even though we're facing a food shortage because of the war. They're saying they want to shut down fossil fuels. What do you think happens? Take a look at Sri Lanka. If that's the country you want to live in, by all means, keep on moving forward with these policy plans. But I'll tell you, it's not the conservatives, the libertarians, and the post-liberals who are going to be dealing with it, because these people are getting out of cities. It's going to be the urban liberal who is oblivious, waking up one day and being like, why are there marauders running through the streets, stealing everything? Why is there no food? And what do I do?
People in the countryside aren't impervious because what happens is corporations will try to sue the American people. The Trans-Pacific Partnership was setting it up so that corporations could sue the American government if we were discriminating, was the language, against their oil company, whether we weren't following ESG standards as citizens or we weren't buying their oil. And then the taxpayer has to pay for that. And the government will find Joey Baloney out in the middle of nowhere in the woods and charge him taxes for some corporation's agenda in Malaysia. And how do you escape from that other than blatantly breaking the law?
Citizen of the world. Like, you're now a citizen of the world, right? So we are now responsible for what happens in another country. I mean, when you think about these 87,000 new IRS agents who may or may not be armed, this is the world in which we're about to wake up in. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. This is very intentional.
Yeah.
None of this feels organic, right? That it just happened upon us in 2 short years. I mean, this feels very intentional.
This has been coming and building up for a very long time. Some people say before even the UN 2030 vision, even before that, there was other visions and other projects that were pushing forward the same end goal. But just back to the Sri Lanka point, because I think it's an important one. Sri Lanka had a 98 plus ESG score.
Wow.
Right? And they did everything when it came to energy policy, domestic policy, hiring policies, governmental policies. They followed and obeyed because they were the poorest country that literally were extorted at the barrel of a gun, just like we saw with Economic Hitman, with that amazing book that detailed the decades of U.S. actions against the developing world. Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Sorry there. Great book, detailed how they were doing this. Now they're doing this under a new disguise, under a new woke term. It's called ESG, as you were bringing up. And it's not just the acquisition and the takeover of corporations. It's the takeover of countries. They beta tested Sri Lanka. Now they're going to be testing it on the rest of the world.
What happened in Sri Lanka?
ESG is basically the Chinese Communist Party for the West.
It is.
And when you're in China and you start a business, at a certain point, you need an office for the Chinese Communist Party in your business. That's what we were told by some experts on the issue.
It's true.
So
It's
in
true.
the United States, what they're doing is ESG as the exact same thing. It is the ideological component that all businesses must adhere to,
Right.
giving some unified authority control over your business and what you're allowed to say or do.
Did you've confirmed that BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, they buy 18 to 22% of a public company, and they have a lot. If not, they have so many publicly traded companies. They have like 18%. Do they then put 3 board members on their board? Is that like every time?
I'm not sure about every time, but that is exactly what they did with Exxon. Again, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard. Now, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of these asset managers. These are just the top 3. And they manage over $22 trillion of assets around the world, right? And again, that's larger than the entire GDP of America. So I say that to say these people own they have a tremendous amount of power and clout and leverage. And specifically to Exxon Mobil, they own, the 3 of them, 21% of Exxon shares. And so what they did is that they worked alongside this very small activist manager, I think it's called Engine Number One, and who had no clout to do anything. But Engine Number One put up these three activist board members and BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard. They decided to come alongside Engine Number One and to use their leverage and their proxy votes to vote in those three board members, right? So they kicked out three, added three, and Exxon Mobil has gone woke.
You want to read? Can you read that one, Ian? Are you able to?
This might be one. It might be a challenge. Where
The whole thing, the whole BlackRock.
That is blurry for me.
All right, let me read it.
Okay.
BlackRock Inc. is an American multinational investment company based in New York City. Founded in 1988, initially as a risk management and fixed income institutional asset manager. BlackRock is the world's largest asset manager with US $10 trillion in assets under management as of January 2022. BlackRock operates globally with 70 offices in 30 countries and clients in 100 countries. BlackRock has sought to position itself as an industry leader in environmental, social, and corporate governance, ESG. The company has faced criticism for worsening climate change, its close ties with the Federal Reserve System during the COVID-19 pandemic, anti-competitive behavior, and its unprecedented investments in China. And you know what? I'll just add as the cherry on top, BlackRock just sounds like the name of a villainous organization from a Mission Impossible movie.
I have my BlackRock right here. It's called Obsidian, and I believe that's where they got the name. It's from Obsidian, the looking glass.
No, there's a lot of occult symbology when it comes to BlackRock, Black Cube, which is also an Israeli intelligence private contracting agency. There's also religious aspects here, spiritual aspects here.
Oh, that's like Mecca is the big black cube.
Exactly. So there's a lot more reference to this than a lot of people realize.
Black stone also. This is all about this black rock. I don't know if it's volcanic glass or what they're talking. What's Mecca?
It's called the Kaaba.
Kaaba. What's it made out of?
I don't actually know, but it's been there for a while. It's actually pretty Islamic.
It's not the. You're talking about Mecca? It's the thing inside of it.
Correct.
Right,
correct.
yeah.
The outer thing is not actually, it's commonly misconstrued as that's the outer thing, but it's actually just a small thing that's been inside of Mecca for thousands of years, pre-Islam, if I'm correct.
I heard it was like a meteorite or something.
Yes,
now we're
that's what
talking.
they say.
Yes.
Regarding anti-competitive behavior for BlackRock, I've read that BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard own each other, and it's just a
Probably shares of each other now.
Yeah, I would. If anyone in the chat can source that data for me and send it to me on Twitter or Minds, I'd love to have another look at it. This was like 10 years ago, 6 years ago when I was investing. Who owns these companies? I want to find the names of the guys, but it just turns out it's other corporations. And he's the CEO, Larry Fink.
Founder.
A BlackRock.
The founder. But who owns it? I don't know. The CEO doesn't even have to have a percent of the company.
Aliens.
And when you ask people, well, what is ESG? No one really knows what ESG is. I mean, it is it's a huge dichotomy between what they say it is and how it's going to revolutionize capitalism, and then there's reality of what's actually going on, right? And it gets more and more insidious as you go in. When you look at the credit rating agencies, I mean, they're making money hand over fist. BlackRock alone, they charge 5 times the fees for their ESG awareness funds versus other funds that are just basic with all kinds of companies in there. But then when you look at these ESG aware companies when you look at these ESG funds and you look at the companies that are on the inside of them, BlackRock, again, one of the largest ESG awareness funds, 90% of those companies and those awareness funds are also in the S&P 500, right? So what's the difference, right? But you're charging 5 times the fee.
I want to tell you why West Virginia is best Virginia and why it is one of the best states. In BlackRock's Wikipedia, it has a West Virginia section. Riley Moore, the state treasurer of West Virginia, said in June 2022 that BlackRock and 5 other financial institutions would no longer be allowed to do business with the state of West Virginia because of their advocacy against the fossil fuel industry. Moore said, at a time when energy demand is skyrocketing and consumers are bearing the brunt of generationally high inflation, it makes absolutely no sense for financial institutions to cut off capital and financing to these legal, profitable industries simply because they don't align with their radical social and political agendas. So good on you, West Virginia.
Yeah, I don't want to. This is when I was earlier talking about the states revolting against a corrupt government that's trying to censor them. It's more about the corporations that we should be focused on.
Exactly. Because again, they are doing what would never get passed in Congress. So they are if you and I, or if America wants to change our values to where we just want to ditch fossil fuel and who cares if the economy crashes? Let's just all move down the path of renewables. Then we should be able to go into a voting booth and we should just vote in all leftists, right? Who say that they just want to destroy America energy. If we want to say, listen, parents do not control our children. We want the government to be able to control our children. If we want to start saying, listen, it's all about social justice. You don't have to earn your title. Meritocracy is out the window. We should be able, as Americans, to go into a voting booth and vote those values into our country. But that will never pass because you will never get the majority of Americans to say, yeah, we just want to upend everything. So what they're doing is they're bypassing you and I as voters to decide what kind of country we want to live in. And they're going to these corporate board elites, and they are now using their leverage, all of their money, to go into these corporations and say, either you align with what we're saying about environmental, that's climate change. The S is
Social.
Yeah, social,
Wokeness.
which is wokeness, which is CRT, transgenderism, with your children, transitioning your children. And then the governance, ESG, the governance, it is actually, I liken it to the glue that's bringing all of it together, right? The E, the S, and the G. And so they're going to these corporations and they're saying either you align with what we say, you need to have X number of women, X number of black people, X number. Doesn't matter if they earned it. Doesn't matter if they deserve it. You just put them on your in leadership because we say it. That is what they're doing.
And they're saying it to the boards of the companies. And is it just like, if you're not going to go along,
down.
So then they'll buy off like certain members of the board and be like, now that we have a majority of the board paid off,
we'll just take
you better
over.
do what we say or we're going to kick you off the board kind of thing.
And it's not just that. I mean, like, that's one of the things that they did. I mean, like, as an example, that's what they did to Exxon. They replaced 3 of the board members of Exxon and they put in 3 very liberal activists, climate change activists, as board members on Exxon, right? So that was one of them coming in and kind of taking over the board. But another thing that these companies get to do, again, they manage a tremendous amount of assets. And so one of the things they can do is just underweight how much of your assets they're going to put their money in, right? Yeah. And if you're a publicly held company and people are selling off your stocks, that's not a good thing. You want people to be buying your stocks, yeah. Right? A lot of these CEOs, their bonuses, their compensation is tied to their stock value. So instead of taking over your board, they can simply underweight you because you're not aligning with their principles.
What's
They
underweight?
pretty much work like the mafia. They come to you and they're like, you're going to do what we say or we're going to steal money from you and beat you down and destroy your livelihood. And then a lot of these companies comply because they want a good score. They want to comply with everything that they're doing. But I think you're also wrong, Ian, by just calling them corporations. They're not just private corporations. They are entities that are working with the U.S. Federal Reserve, printing money out of thin air, funneling it into Wall Street with no accountability, with no track record, with no transparency at all. And now when you have the coffers of the Federal Reserve at your beck and call, you could do whatever you want. You could say, hey, we're going to invest money here. We're going to put money here. We're going to give this company here, this corporation here, all this money. You want some of it? You got to go along. Get on your knees and worship the altar of our rule that we're going to be, of course, pushing on everyone. And it's even beyond just even BlackRock. California mandated increased diversity on their corporate boards. That was a law. They had to comply. So this was going along with their policies that are being implemented, not through just economic force, but also government force, as we're seeing the same people responsible for a lot of these policies coalesce and implement them in all aspects of life.
You're right that calling corporations not accurate. They need new names for these megacorps, but then the word corp is in there. I'd rather just call them something unique when they've become, so prolific. Cabals, that's a good way to put it. Legal cabals. You said that they underweight a corporation. How does that work? If a BlackRock were to have, what are they? They own 20% of the company. So how would they do that? What would that look like?
Well, just for example, like I said, they have just those top 3, $22 trillion, right? And then they get to decide how much of their money, of your money, because it's really your money. It's not their money. You invest in one of their funds, right? And so they're supposed to have this fiduciary responsibility where it's all about maximizing your profitability. And so they take your money. So I say their money, but it's not really their money. It's they manage roughly $22 trillion. And so they can decide where they want to put that money.
And that's stakeholder capitalism.
Stakeholder. Now, define a stakeholder, right? You're here in America and you're, busting your hump. My grandfather, he was a janitor. It was just, and so he could take his money and try to invest, and he wants to retire. But instead of investing along his values, his principles, and investing for the purpose of maximizing his few dollars so that one day maybe he can retire, send his kids off to college, they take that money and they say, well, hey, my stakeholder is not you, the shareholder, right? My stakeholder is, I don't know, climate change in some remote part of Africa, right? Building roads or schools or social justice in some, I don't know, in the Amazon somewhere. So it's very nebulous. It's very, there's a tremendous amount of ambiguity. The SEC has now gotten involved because there's a lot of greenwashing where you have people who are just saying they're green or that they're ESG compliant just because, in essence, I liken it to designer label. Right? ESG is nothing more than a designer label. And you want to have that designer label because now you can charge more fees. You look chic. People want to invite you to the Christmas party. And because there's nothing good that's coming out from this.
So how did we end up with Dr. Oz instead of you? Well, Dr. Oz, he doesn't seem to know anything about this. He doesn't talk about it. It seems very generic. You were running. You seem to be extremely knowledgeable on all of these issues internationally and domestically. And the people of Pennsylvania, that's the choice they get?
Well, let me just say, the people of Pennsylvania are some of the best people. 13 months, 1,500 miles every single week. The overwhelming majority of the rooms I walk in, I was the only Black person in the room. And yet I felt like I was their sister. I felt like we were that we had a meeting of the minds and we were trying to fight and win our country back. I absolutely love the people of Pennsylvania. My heart grieved, just because I believe they deserve good leadership. I believe they deserve people who will actually, not just Pennsylvania, but all of America. My heart grieves for us. We are living in very serious times, and we have some very unserious, quote unquote, leaders right now, right? And everybody seems to be lining their own pocket. When you look at Nancy Pelosi and her husband, Paul Pelosi, what appears to be some insider trading going on, who knows, right? And you see that time and time again. You see all this money going over to Ukraine and no one can tell you where the money is going. But hey, let's trust them. Although Ernst & Young ranks Ukraine in the top 5 most corrupt countries in the world, right? But hey, let's just send over another, $12 billion. And if you don't do it, you must be a Russian sympathizer, right? You can't have any honest dialogue about some very serious things that are going on right now. And that is the reason why I ran. I am the most unlikely candidate. Just to give some perspective, I ran against, my 2 main primary opponents. They spent, when you look at what they spent and the money from the PACs, they spent $60 million on a primary race, right? I spent less than $2 million and all of it came from the people. But this is what you get by 13 months, 1,500 miles, knocking on every door. I have no regrets. Yeah. I left it all out there on the road. Now, the people have chosen, in large part because Sean Hannity is a jackass. Can I say that?
Yes.
Can I say that?
Technically, yeah.
Okay, great.
Amen. Hallelujah.
The people were manipulated. The people were manipulated. We were going to win. Sean Hannity is a jackass, but we already know that. I don't think that's a cuss word. I was asking Jesus about that on the way up here.
It's a donkey.
It's a donkey, right? It's another way of saying donkey, but he is.
Term of endearment.
I know. But nonetheless, we're now in a race. I am not on the ballot. I will be walking in, voting Republican all the way down because God knows Fetterman is a hot mess and I would never vote for him. And I would encourage Pennsylvanians to do the same, to walk in and not vote for Fetterman.
Yeah,
What did
I would.
Hannity do?
I would actually even say Hannity is a statist stooge, and I definitely agree
he's
with
a
your
puppet.
sentiments.
He's a puppet.
Absolutely,
Remember-
a puppet of the intelligence agencies.
I was on
but I
his
really,
show for 7
Yeah.
different times. He never once asked me any of those riveting questions
And-
that he wanted to ask in the last 5 days.
And what you're saying about the ESG score is the nail on the head. It's one of the most important issues that no one else wants to
It's
really
the
talk
most
about.
important topic.
And you covered it very, very well, which again, a lot of people don't do that. And a lot of people are afraid to talk about these issues. So I commend you for having the courage for doing so and speaking about these issues so boldly. But I just wanted to ask you specifically, what in the world do you think Donald Trump was thinking endorsing Oz over you? What was going through his head? What's going on here?
Before you answer,
now,
I-
y'all know I got to go back to Pennsylvania, right? So don't get me in trouble
Well, I wanna-
with the people.
I look forward to,
Pennsylvania.
assuming we ever get the opportunity, sitting down with former President Trump and just saying to him, now, when you made the terrible mistake of endorsing Dr. Oz over Kathy Barnette, did you do it on purpose, or were you aware that it was a tremendous mistake and you did it anyway?
Well,
Call me
Oz is
after.
famous, and I love fame. Like, what's he? I don't know.
What was
I'll
he
be honest,
He's
thinking?
drawn to the light. You know,
Everyone
like a moth.
agrees. Everyone agrees it was a terrible mistake. You should not have endorsed Oz. Everyone's saying. At least that's what I was told. What would you say to that?
Well, I was going to ask what Hannity. What did he do that in the last
He lied.
about you?
He lied.
Really?
Oh, he dragged me. He dragged
To
me
your
all
face?
across. No, he's a punk. Of course he wasn't, right? And I went on Twitter and I said, well, since you have all of these riveting questions, I am gonna, I'm gonna hold Monday, 9 p.m. Come into studio. You, the other person you are really, in love with and helping. It'll be 2 against 1. I'll come in. You can ask me all of these riveting questions, but that's not the point. The point is they looked up and they were like, oh my God, this little black chick is about to win. And we can't have that, right? Because what was done to me was not, and this is something for the Republican Party, right? For the voters to pay attention to, that I was not dragged with these horrible lies, right? Calling me a Black Lives Matter supporter, that I'm a part of Black Lives Matter. They would get a picture of me and they will flash a picture of me after saying Black Lives Matter, or flash a picture of me after saying black rioters, right?
Nice.
Of playing those really stupid games. And it wasn't the left who was doing this to me. It was my own party, which just shocked the world. I mean, I know, politics is dirty, but that's a whole nother level. And I'm a conservative, and I don't think it was racist necessarily, although racism and elitism feels a whole lot alike in today's economy of things. No one came to my house and told me to walk out and try to, lynch me or anything like that. That's real racism, right? Mm-hmm. But this was really ugly. It was really nasty. It wasn't just politics as usual. But the Republican Party, I know they want us to be all about the party. And I recognize, and it's such a dichotomy for me, because there's no way on God's green earth would I ever vote for a Democrat, right? And we live in a 2-party system. So you're either voting for one or the other. And yet it was my values that brought me to the Republican Party. It was my values that got me involved in these political races. And I do not believe I have to abdicate my values in order to support the party. I think it's our business to beat the party into alignment. And right now we have not just a cabal among ESG corporate board members or a cabal among Democrats, but we have it also within the Republican Party. And if I could just say one more thing. Let me just throw this out here as well. I have a tremendous amount of hope by what I saw in my race. In my race, in those last 5 days, we were about to win. And I saw over 330,000 Pennsylvanians, almost a third of Pennsylvanians came out and voted for me, right? And they did so in defiance of millions of dollars of lies from people like, Rick Grinnell, Greg Kelly, Sean Hannity. They defied them. They also defied all of the Trump influencers who came out and said, don't vote for her. They defied Donald Trump himself, and they still came out and voted for me. That gives me a tremendous amount of hope, right? That people are not willing to just check their brains at the door and just do as they're told. People are waking up. Something what you said a little bit earlier. People are being red pilled, and they're recognizing something has gone fundamentally wrong with how our nation is being governed, and we want different. The problem is that I lost by roughly 5 points, and it was as a direct result, I believe, of what people who say they are conservative, people who say they are a part of our party, did to shove someone else down our throat. And so now we got to live with that decision. But I still have a tremendous amount of hope by when I see how my race turned out, and that people they refuse to be denied a better option.
Hannity may as well have endorsed Fetterman, because Dr. Oz is unrelatable and unlikable, and that gives Fetterman a huge advantage. Look, I've seen the videos that Fetterman puts out. He's got health issues. He's got something, really, really wrong with his neck. I hope he's okay. I don't know what that is. He was always wearing, it was the weirdest thing. He's in suits and he's wearing a scarf. And it's because he's got something seriously wrong. I mean, the man had a stroke. Yeah. But you look at the videos, and Dr. Oz pronounces the name of a store wrong. And this was a big. I don't know if you got, what did he say?
Yeah.
Was it Wegmans or something?
Wegmans. I don't remember how.
And then he was like, "My wife's trying to make crudité," and it's just like, who is he trying to pull suburban white upper class voters or something? And then Fetterman comes out and he really tries to play up to the Philadelphia, working class Democrat, good old boy or whatever. These are the guys that showed up when Antifa was trying to tear down the Christopher Columbus statue. This is a predominantly Democrat city.
Yeah.
That's what Fetterman is going for. When Hannity came out and he tanked your campaign and then helps prop up Oz, he was basically saying, I hope Fetterman wins.
Listen, Fetterman is horrid. I mean, horrible, right? I mean, he was horrible before the stroke. Now he's horrible
with health issues.
A horrible person who had a stroke, right? Yeah. That's who he is, essentially. From his physical appearance before the stroke, his physical appearance after the stroke, his ideologies, his thing, the man chased down a black man with a shotgun.
That's crazy.
It's a great
What was that story? What happened?
Exactly. The black man was just outside trying to get some exercise and just jogging.
He claimed he heard some gunshots. So he grabbed a shotgun, went outside, and there was a black guy jogging, and he chased after him.
What?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Just happened to see a random black man running, right? And then, he drops his son off, runs in the house, gets his shotgun, gets in his truck, barrels down on this black man, and holds him there with the shotgun up to his chest until the police came, right? And said, I was thinking about, one of the school shootings, and I thought I heard a gunshot. Dude, it's Saturday morning, 9:00 in the morning.
Right. It was,
school's not in.
Right, and it was fireworks. It was
a
very different sound.
I have absolutely no idea, but this is a horrible individual, and he would make a horrible senator. And my hope is that people will wake up. And yet, at the same time, I have to say, if we keep holding our nose, voting for the lesser of two evils, you have to begin to ask yourself as conservatives, what are we actually conserving? Yeah. We now have red flag laws. We now have 87,000 new IRS agents who may or may not be armed, who the IRS has told to now start tracking transactions of $200 or greater. We now have open borders. It's just a litany of things that we were like, we don't want. So at some point, maybe November 9th, we'll be ready to have a conversation about what we need to do to make sure that our own elites within the Republican Party don't tank the next conservative who's about to win solely because they want to keep control.
Yeah, this is how they get you with the voting for the lesser of two evils. This has been the Ponzi scheme run on the American people for very long. And then, of course, you have Dr. Oz, who was an early promoter of trans children all the way back in 2010. And just back to the question, because I'm really curious. Why do you think Donald Trump did this? Was it because Sean Hannity was in his ear, or was there something else happening behind the scenes?
Yeah, no comment.
I think
I
so.
gotta go back home, guys.
I think Hannity, for whatever reason, wants Fetterman to win. I love that moment where Tucker Carlson is doing the handoff with John Hannity, and he's talking about, I think he was talking about Amazon and Amazon screwing over the American people. And then as he's handing it off, Hannity goes, it's a private corporation. If they want to provide a good and people pay for it, they're allowed to do it. And Tucker just does the Tucker face like, what?
What? Yeah.
Like that was like a clear split between the populist new MAGA Republican base, which Tucker is a big proponent of and a big part of, and then the old corporatist neocon Republican establishment of Hannity. Hannity talks with Trump, probably said, you got to go with Oz so that Fetterman wins. I don't think he literally said that. He probably just lied to Trump, and Trump was like, Oz, huh? Okay, I'll go with Oz.
I don't think Trump wants Fetterman to win.
I don't think Trump does. I think Hannity does.
I think that we have a party outside, I'm not talking about Oz, I'm not talking about the race, I'm just saying in general, and it's something that I said the entire time when I was on the campaign trail, that we have the Republican elites, they are not as concerned about winning as you and I may be concerned about it. They are more concerned about control. If the GOP was interested in winning, they would be knocking down my door trying to get someone like me who was able to move the needle, not just within Republican conservatives, which I have a strong grasp on, but the ability to walk into any community and share our story and move people into our category. We need that kind of energy and enthusiasm desperately within the Republican Party. And if the Republican GOP, the elites, the machine within that was interested in winning, they would have my little brown face all over the place, but they don't, because it's not about winning. It's about, let's make sure we control the narrative. And we only have our people and our faces right out there saying what we want them to say. And that is, again, my heart grieve, because I don't believe it's hyperbole. We're about to lose our country. And I know most Americans don't think that that can happen, but I believe we're on the precipice.
Let me pull up this story from the New York Post to exemplify what you just said. Killings in New York City subway system skyrocket to highest level in 25 years, even as ridership plummeted. This is part of an ongoing trend we've seen across the country. Crime is skyrocketing, homicides, aggravated assaults, and robberies. These horrifying stories. A woman gets pushed on the subway tracks. A naked dude running through the subway. I don't know if you saw that. People in Philadelphia.
A woman was raped.
I was going to say, and people just watched it happen.
Filmed it. They didn't
it.
just watch it. They pulled out their phone, right? And that's right around... I'm telling you, my kids and I, we every weekend during the summer, we were on the train from Philadelphia going into New York, and we would spend the weekend in New York every single weekend during the summer. I have not been to New York in 2 years now because it is crazy. I mean, just case in point, in Philadelphia, before the George Soros-backed district attorney Larry Krasner came into office, there are 6 county jails in Philadelphia, and they were at or max capacity. At capacity is a little over 8,000, right? Larry Krasner, George Soros-backed district attorney Larry Krasner, comes into office, and instead of it being at 8,000, he put it down to, I'm gonna round up, 5,000, right? So 8,000 minus 5,000, there's 3,000 more people who would generally be in jail somewhere, just in Philadelphia. I'm not talking about all of Pennsylvania, just in the Philadelphia county, 3,000 people who would generally be locked up somewhere and not out there on the streets able to impact law-abiding citizens. They're now out there. And when you ask Larry Krasner, why are you doing this, Larry? He says things like, oh, I want to do family reunification. Right? The broken home and the black family. We need to get people out of jail and put them back home with the people, right? But that's 3,000. What part? I'm sure there are some portion of that 3,000 who should not be in this situation. Is wrong? They shouldn't be there. But how many of the 3,000? The whole 3,000? Or a smaller portion of that 3,000. That is the reason why we have crime at the rate that it is. Our judicial system has been turned into a revolving door.
They should put video webcams in prisons for people, because if they should be able to unify with their family and communicate with their family, everybody should, even in prison, in my opinion, if you want people to become better people as a result of being there, and let them do that. But if they're violent criminals, I don't see.
But don't put them back outside.
The fear of losing the country is that there's so much violent crime that the government can't stop it, and then we appeal to private corporations to bring in private security, and that's the loss. Then we've lost our country. Then the corporations run the show. So that's what I want to avoid.
This is all manufactured chaos. It is manufactured loss. I mean, it's just manufactured, and the reason because they want us to be dependent.
Well, it's almost like there's this very massive, like a restart happening. Like a big.
The Great Reset.
Yeah, something like that.
A great
but
reset.
It'd be called something different.
A great reset.
Yeah, maybe that one's fine. Great
reset.
reset.
So what they say is what the activists were telling me back during Occupy is, from the ashes of the old, we shall build anew. That in order to build the system they want, they got to knock down the old one. This is the idea. So you have crime crushing these cities. People are fleeing them. And then you can come in. What did Bill de Blasio say when the property values tanked? He's like, now we can buy them up and create government housing on the cheap. And so you have a government that implements policies that destroys a private real estate industry. Then the government comes in and buys it up for pennies on the dollar to create their government policy with new land they've acquired from the policies that destroyed them.
It's like the Soviet
amazing.
Union.
Yep, a lot like it.
So they did it with guns. They didn't even bother bankrupting.
And they're already so rich. And I used to always say to myself, running for office, again, I've had many careers. I'm an author. You see my book back there, Nothing to Lose, Everything to Gain, Being Black and Conservative in America. A news commentator, military, was accepted into officer candidacy school, worked in the financial industry, worked as a adjunct professor of corporate finance. I've had a lot of different careers in my lifetime. But right before I decided to get into politics, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I was homeschooling my children. We've always lived in really great school districts. I just believed I could do it better than what my babies would have been learning in the school system, especially when they come home and my daughter is being taught about same-sex marriage and my son is being taught about different family configurations in third grade. I was like, I think we could do this better, honey. And so we started homeschooling our kids. And so this was never on my bucket list of things to do, but we need to engage our government and we need to do it now. We need to demand better, not from Democrats, but from Republicans, because a lot of this stuff that's going on, I don't know if you guys even know about Podesta, Bill Clinton's former chief of staff, Hillary Clinton. Yeah, exactly.
John
right.
Podesta. Yeah.
Yeah. He is now, Biden has now tapped him to
be in his administration to specifically work in the climate change.
Yes. The almost $400 billion is now under his hands. And what do you think he's going to do with that? This is a very highly political figure. He's going to send this money into different campaigns and different organizations that will now, I suspect, who would now turn around and donate that money to these particular campaigns. Now, if I know that and you know that, I'm sure Ted Cruz and others know that. And why are these people, Republicans, who see themselves as president one day, not standing up and shouting this from the rooftop?
Shills?
Or they just don't realize that we can recover the carbon and reuse it out of the atmosphere with the carbon dioxide. Just pull the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Because they want to do electric grids. Like Thomas Massey was talking to Pete Buttigieg about electric cars requiring like twice as much electricity as a refrigerator, American's refrigerator. And how by 2030, if everyone has one electric car, how can the grid handle that? And Buttigieg is like, his response is, well, it's going to have to. And Thomas is like, no. How will we do it?
Yeah.
They don't have an answer. That's the old Seamus joke, that when you say, okay, you want good thing, how do you get it? They go, you want bad thing. Well, then you want bad thing. If you question them at any point as to how they actually will implement their utopian vision, they just say, you're a fascist, you're racist.
And that it has to get done.
You're a Putin sympathizer, right? Listen, these people have a lot of knowledge, but they lack wisdom. right?
No, I don't think they have a lot of knowledge or wisdom.
Well, no, they lack wisdom. They see a hammer and a nail, and instead of using it for its intended purposes, they look at a hammer and nail and say, look, I found a doorstop and a key, right? This isn't how the world works. It's not how any of this works. And yet, these people are now running our country, and that is a fact. And all of this is happening under
If you
their
want
watch.
to assume ignorance, but it also could be intentional. The reason we have crime skyrocketing in these cities is because they want it to happen.
I
Because
agree.
they want the economy to be destroyed. It's because they want to have a great reset.
Exactly.
It's either that or they are some of the most incompetent people ever. And when I listen to Janet Yellen is no dummy. This is a very smart woman. And when she talks about transitory inflation, I reposted today an article I wrote in November of 2021. And I was like, newsflash, this ain't transitional. This is going to stay. This is going to be very sticky. I spent 3 months with our farmers. I was like, let me just start off with the very beginning of our supply chain. And let you hear what farmers are saying about fuel and the cost of fuel. Oil right now is up 137%. And I'm like, this is not transitory. This is going to be very sticky. This is going to destroy lives. And yet Janet Yellen, Jerome Powell, they're all out here talking about transitory inflation. Now, I have to say, either these are some of the dumbest people who have ever managed to get their hand on power, or they know exactly what they're doing, right?
I think they know exactly.
And these
what
are
they're
not
doing.
dumb people.
Not all,
Yeah.
not all of them, maybe. But
Janet Yellen knows.
right. Many
Jerome
of these
Powell
people,
knows.
Look, when we were talking about this the other night, when Victoria Nuland said that there are biological research facilities in Ukraine that we're very concerned about Russia getting their hands on. We want to protect them. And then the media comes out immediately saying, biolabs don't exist. Biolabs don't exist. Okay, well, they know they do. They know they're concerned about them. And then we had a conversation with the guest where he said there's no biological weapons research labs. The U.S. isn't doing that. And I'm like, it's a semantic argument. Right. So it's you have these people in the media, in government saying the U.S. does not do these things. And then they go and do them, but then argue semantics about it. So my example was, if a guy created a factory that was building explosives and someone said, this dude's building a weapons factory. No, the explosives are for mining. And it's like, okay, those can be sold off and used as weapons, right? Yes. Okay, so we're having a semantic argument. You're making something dangerous.
Of course.
And like transitory inflation is semantic. Like it's transitory for now until it becomes permanent
they
later.
just keep lying.
It's just another form of transition.
It's the meme where they're like, first, inflation isn't happening. Then inflation might be happening, but it's not that big of a deal. Next, inflation is happening, but it's transitory. Finally, inflation's a good thing. Here's how it helps. That's what they do.
But
that's
now
a cycle
he's
of
coming
news.
out. I mean, I watched 8 hours of the big banks in America testifying before the House committee, the banking committee in the House. And it was astounding to me when they asked a question, do you believe Jerome Powell can handle and stop this inflation? They all raised their hand. Yes, we agree. And then Jamie Dimon comes out right after that saying the Federal Reserve is my judge, jury, and hangman. So of course, it was something that you alluded to earlier. They are controlled. The banks are controlled by the Federal Reserve. They're going to dance to whatever tune Jerome Powell plays, because again, as Jamie Dimon said, they are judge, jury, and hangman. So they're going to do whatever they need to. They're going to say whatever they need to say.
And the Federal Reserve is owned. Do you know who owns it?
Not the people.
Yeah, it's a private company that's basically adherent to the Bank for International Settlements in Switzerland, the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve of New York, and the Bank of Australia, like run through this node, the Swiss bank node called the Bank for International Settlements. I don't know. I think it's the same people that own BlackRock and State Street that own and run that thing. But it's also behind the scenes, and hasn't yet been like an audit or oversight. It's intentionally created so that we don't have oversight over the company.
Well, the Senate is supposed to have oversight over the Federal Reserve. To clarify their mandates would be one thing of stabilizing prices, but so they're supposed to have oversight over them.
How do you see the transition of our economy right now? What do you see happening? I see like the New World Order. They want to move to this liberal, global one world. At least I do. But how do you see America progressing economically?
I think we're in for some really hard days. When you hear the Federal Reserve chair saying, I am committed to destroying demand, now they're talking about demand destruction. That's how they they coin it. And when I was listening to it, I heard several people say on the talking heads, demand destruction. I'm like, I still have family who live on that pig farm in southern Alabama. The farm is no longer operable, but they're very poor. And when I hear demand destruction, I immediately see faces. I immediately see who is going to be destroyed in this process. These people are uberly wealthy. This is not going to impact them very much. The Federal Reserve is the number one reason why we have income inequality right now. And now they are also creating a lack of an opportunity gap, right, between those who have and have not. That gap is growing. In the first year of COVID of 2020, our nation increased the number of millionaires by 30%. And I'm talking to people who were getting pay cuts, like 35% pay cuts, right? And I'm listening to the media talking about we're all in this together. And yet our nation, at one of the most, destructive times in our economy and lives, we were growing the number of millionaires by 30%. If you went into COVID with a significant amount of assets, it was the best thing that ever happened to you, as the Federal Reserve specifically began to shift wealth from the people to certain entities, right? They are the number one reason for this wealth gap that we have. And now we're looking to the Federal Reserve to fix what the Federal Reserve broke in the first place.
We are going to go to Super Chats. So if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and share the show with your friends. Be the notification you want to see in the world. A lot of people are mentioning, with about a month to go from the midterms, that YouTube's no longer notifying them that the show is live. So you can bypass the censorship by just being the notification and sharing the video yourself so that other people can see it. Let's read your Super Chats. We got Raymond G. Stanley Jr. who says, Kathy, many of us watching voted for you. Let's go. Well, there you go.
There's another one too above that looks pretty interesting.
Which one?
Nick and Denise.
You go for it. Read it.
This is from Pabs McGee.
Paps McGee.
Yeah, he says, had to stop listening to Pink Floyd for Timcast IRL. Worth it. Also, getting married Saturday. Can I get a shout out? Nick and Denise. Shout out.
Denise.
Shouts out.
Shout out. Abyss Mom says, and you homeschooled. Heck yeah. I'm buying your book ASAP. You can be my role model. Ian, keep being you.
What's the summary of the book?
It's a clarion call that we are about to lose our country and we need to get our head out of the sand. I looked at the Black community as a petri dish of what happens when Democrats come in and take absolute control of everything. They leave people broken and bruised. And I was sending out this clarion call to the broader American culture that what has happened in the Black community, just looking at what happens in a community where Democrats have control of everything, is that if we don't get our head out of the sand, what has happened to the Black community is getting ready to spill out and begin to impact all of us. And now look, every summer, what happens in Chicago, that's been happening for decades now. 20 Black people get murdered, 30 Black people get murdered in one day. But, and we all saw it. And some people are like, oh yeah, oh, that's so sad, but it happens over there, right? But now that has spilled out of just inner city Chicago and now is around the corner of my house and your house, right? And that is what the book was warning about. And so my book is literally reading like prophecy right now. And I am no prophet, but it's not rocket science to be able to take a look at what is happening and what is going to happen if we don't get engaged.
All right. OMG Puppy says, Washington's fear is not an alliance between Russia and China. It's an alliance between Russia and Europe. Zig Brzezinski identified Ukraine as the key to shattering that relationship in The Grand Chessboard, CIA, 1997.
Yeah, Zbigniew Brzezinski, he was a part of the CFR Trilateral Commission and Bilderberg Group. I actually was able to talk to him previously before on my YouTube channel. He has since passed away, but he was also the main person who, of course, set up the Mujahideen and in Afghanistan to fight the Russians. His foreign policy, especially being the foreign advisor for Jimmy Carter, has set a lot of this into motion, and he has been very prophetic in a lot of his political scholars and philosophies.
Interesting. Placid Saint says Tulsi only changed her stance on guns when a stalker threatened her, and she was denied a permit in her state, Hawaii, to get a gun by the very laws she helped push and support in her state.
Yeah. I mean, firearm is the great equalizer.
Yep.
It is the
Yep.
great equalizer between me and someone who's bigger, stronger, and more determined to hurt me or my family. Right?
A 5', 95-pound woman with a gun is going to be able to hold her own against a 6'3", 220-pound lean muscle man who doesn't have a gun. In
Yep.
fact, even if he did have a gun, she'd still be able to hold her own.
Yeah.
Training is what it really comes down to in that capacity. So yeah, I am all for guns. People should have them. Vasht says she literally campaigned on taking away military-style weapons from people. That is our literal second most important freedom. That's right. As Dave Chappelle said, second one there is there in case first doesn't work out.
That's right.
That's what he said, right?
Exactly.
Yep. Lizard says, I feel more like we're in pre-war fallout. Did you guys see this one in August? The U.S. government approved a $100 million contract for the expansion of Raven Rock. You guys know what Raven Rock is?
No.
It's the emergency bunker not too far away from here where the government's going to flee to in the event of a nuclear war. To better understand this, the construction won't be done until 2027. But that doesn't mean the reaction isn't due to the fear of nuclear war.
Right.
Right? If we got a warning a hurricane was coming, I'd be like, we have no hurricane defense. We should probably invest in that. It won't be done until next year, but hey, we should start something, right?
Yeah.
There's also the expansion of Mount Weather. A new building's being put up. I think 65,000 square feet. Mount Weather is another emergency bunker nearby. So the guest last night mentioned construction going on at these bunkers, and I was like, what? So we looked into it. Yeah, $100 million contract in August for the
Wow.
expansion of Raven Rock.
And didn't the
crazy.
federal
Maybe-
government just buy some pills?
Potassium iodide. Oh, no. Was it Nipron or something?
I forgot the name.
No.
Radiation
pills.
pills.
Yeah, radiation pills.
It was proprietary pharmaceutical that they spent gave a
Google it.
pharmaceutical
So
company a bunch of
it was
money.
$295 million, I think.
That's crazy. I totally failed
Remember
to follow that
when
reference
Trump
now.
won in 2016 and the left said, when Trump gets in office, we're going to have wars, and rumors of wars? No, it's happening under them.
What would I search to find this medicine?
295 million radioactive medicine, U.S. government, HHS, whatever. Did you find it?
Searching now.
Should come up.
Yeah, 290 million. Let's see what it's called.
Which was the drug?
N-plate.
N-plate. There you go.
It's like the letter N and then the word plate.
All right. Nunn says, Tulsi is the ultimate fair weather fan. Anti-2A grifter, Trojan horse, spoiler vote. Liz Cheney 2.0, angling for an anchor spot on Fox News.
I wonder.
Well, some people are concerned that if she runs independent, I don't think she's going to run as an independent, but they think she'll pull votes away from the
Republicans.
Republicans.
She was
Yeah.
very like pro-war in the Middle East for a while. Like she was like, the Taliban are evil. We must defend our freedoms. They want to take our freedoms away. And I'm like, dude, that was the narrative they sold us in 2001 to get us to go conquer. That's what brought about the Muslim ban from Donald Trump, or this flight ban list. And that's so weird because Tulsi on so many other things I think she's so brilliant about. I don't know if she realized something. I mean, I know she was serving in the military at that time.
Paul Thongam says, Tim, saw your interview with John Stossel earlier today. It was a great interview. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Yes, they published that. It's actually fairly old, I think. It's like a year old. I'm not sure. Was it like a year old? Yep. That was fun, though. John Stossel's pretty awesome. Clayton Johnson says, nothing like a world war to keep a civil war from happening in the U.S.
No.
One scenario, the elites have more control over the outcome. Patriots are angry.
No. World wars do not stop civil wars from happening. They give people an opportunity to create civil wars.
Yup. Yeah. You mentioned this before. Russia. in World War I.
Spain in World War II.
Great examples, yeah.
Yeah. When the war happens, it's like, now's our chance. So my fear, as many people have mentioned, China is going to say, oh, the U.S. once the U.S. is directly involved, like explicitly, overtly with U.S. troops, China goes right for Taiwan, knowing we can't do
Absolutely.
anything about it.
I say that
And
all the
then
time.
World War III.
It's going to happen anyway. I earnestly believe China is going to do a Hong Kong on Taiwan. And instead, it's going to happen. And that alone would be devastating to our economy when you look at the semiconductors and
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Max Reddick says, Tim, have you considered having fans on the show? You could do a lottery system once a month. They would share the video there on with friends and family. If you did this, you would blow up fast. Perhaps. But we are preparing a brick and mortar location, a physical location. So what we might do is some kind of either first come, first serve or lottery system for members where you can come to a private Friday night IRL live. So basically what we might do is with the new space, the Friday night show might be in our new expanded brick and mortar location. it's where we want to do the Saturday morning cartoons events, bringing in families and their kids to build community. And then Friday night, we would do the show, but then on the upper floors. On the lower floor, you hang out, have drinks, watch the show. And then once we wrap, we hang out for a little bit afterwards. And so that would be like a VIP members thing. That we got to figure out how to do it.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, it's hard to figure out exactly how to do it for security reasons and how many, like the occupancy might be like 20 to 40. And so how do people sign up for it? We might just be like first come, first serve. Here are the tickets. Go for it. And then it's like, maybe it's going to be members only, but you still got to buy a ticket because we got to pay for the business and everything like that. So we'll figure it out. And then someone actually said we should do like a monthly lottery for like members. Mm-hmm. And I was like, sure. I don't know. We'll look into that. I had a really cool idea for the business because, we're talking about doing this cafe. What I want to do is I want to put a half craps table next to the cash register. And I don't know if it's legal, but I think it is. What you do is you'd order your food and drink, and then you would get the opportunity at no extra cost to roll the craps dice. And if you get 7 or 11, you win half off your order.
Wow.
So it's just like either you pay half off or you don't. And that's it. And it's like a 49 point something % chance of getting half off your order. So it's purely promotional and for fun. I think people would want to come to us more than anyone else over the chance to get cheaper coffee and bagels or whatever. And then I was like, we could also do like a roulette thing or something, or like a blackjack thing. How fun would that be? You're like, you go in and real quick as you're paying, you're like, come on, let me get half off my food. You don't win any money. It doesn't cost you any money. It's a free thing. So I wonder if that's legal. I think it might be, but they might still consider it gambling or something because you're buying food or whatever. I don't know. I just think it would be fun to be like, roll the die, you get aces, and then it's like, oh, that's it. Your meal's free.
It would be
Have
fun,
a nice day.
Sure.
Yep. I think if we're basically giving away the money without you having to put anything in, it might be free. Like you can't win money from it. Well, I guess it's technically winning money. We don't win your money though. You can't lose your money. That's it. You can't. So maybe that's it.
You're not wagering anything, so it wouldn't be real gambling.
Right.
I don't think.
Like either you pay for your food or we give you the food for free. So it's like not really gambling. Mm-hmm. I don't know. We're gonna have skee ball too. That'll be fun. Skee ball tournaments. That'll be a whole lot of fun. We're gonna have video games and skee ball.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah. Damian Masters, man, we got a lot of people ragging on Tulsi. He says Tulsi is a Democrat plant going to pull Republican votes from Trump in the election so Biden can win again. I don't think Tulsi's running for president. Did she announce she was? Did I miss something?
No.
I don't know. Ryan Brown says, Tim, if you are willing to entertain some quack neo-Nostradamus, why don't you actually research the Rendsburg prophecies finally? They are over 100 years old and still accurate geopolitically. Please take the time and do it. I believe Ian is looking that up right now.
Rendsburg prophecies?
This sounds like a job for Shane Cashman. Looking up the Rendsburg prophecies.
Van Rendsburg.
Oh, so we're hoping Shane Cashman's new show, Inverted. I think it's like it tells Inverted World Live or something like that. It's going to be a live show talking about this kind of stuff, mysteries, predictions, aliens, Bigfoot, and all that kind of stuff. We're hoping to have that ready to go really, really soon within the next couple of weeks. So new show. I'm really excited for it. A lot of work going into it. We're really excited to have this up and running. And then, of course, Tales from the Inverted World will keep continuing. And it's like long form and book format. And then we're going to have a weekly show discussing all of this unsolved mysteries and creepy weirdness. All right. Eggman says, people on the non-left side immediately forget about grifting the moment someone on the other side says something they like. We are only making the grifters' jobs easier if we are that easy to please.
That is so true.
I mean, Ian, you brought this up that Tulsi Gabbard made the announcement she's quitting the Democratic Party the day she launched her new show.
Yeah, that was probably pre-planned. It's got to be.
Well, of course.
Publicity stunt. But at the same time, she's following her heart, I believe.
Yeah,
she's got PR. She needs better PR. She needed it in the first time she ran for president too. She went up there, was honest, plain, straightforward, and got steamrolled because she didn't have like a manipulation tactic ready to go.
Brian McGannon says, watching the episode with Papa John last year, Tim, you slimmed down. Reminder, being healthy is a revolutionary act now. Discipline equals freedom. Eat beef and move your body. Yeah, so since then, I basically cut sugar out, for the most part. And I've brought it back in a little bit, but for the most part, I avoid sugar. I just have like a lot of fat, tons of fat.
Dude, the Stossel interview was eye-opening because you looked swole. Like when I knew you a year ago, I didn't look at you and think like, oh, he's got a swollen face. But
you mean fat?
Yeah, like swole. But I wonder how
swole means like ripped, doesn't it?
Well, that's what I'm talking muscular. About.
Yeah, but I wonder how many people are living life not realizing how fat they are.
Right. I was able to see it and I could tell that was you like a year ago. I could just see it in the interview just looking at it. Just
You
from the
couldn't
footage.
tell or what?
I could tell.
Oh,
'Cause
yeah,
I see
no,
you
of
every day
course.
now. So
Yeah.
telling the difference was immediate. Yeah, it was
I'm gonna
immediate.
have
You
to
should
go out
watch
there
it.
and
I lost
look.
like
You should
30
watch the
pounds.
interview.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was crazy
Good
because
for you.
I was exercising
Good
every
job,
day,
Joe.
but I was eating like grains and bread and stuff. And then I cut all that stuff out. Now I basically drink like a gallon of sour cream every day, and all the weight just comes right off.
Yeah.
I'm half kidding about
It's
that.
because
too.
you work out. Because you skate.
I
a lot.
was working out when I was at like 200, and I was skating every
but
day.
fat and not working out is not.
I
good.
was working
No.
out.
If you were eating the sour cream and not working out, that
Right.
wouldn't be good. It's because
No,
you're
definitely.
burning the fat. It's same.
I think it's sugar. I think it's sugar, grains, carbohydrates. People overload on that stuff, and
Absolutely.
it's really, really bad.
adds up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What is this, Luke?
I have so many comments. I'm going to hold myself back
Luke's
on
gonna
now.
feed you some bone broth.
Luke's sitting there eating at midnight, eating bacon and pickles.
I'm in good shape too. You know, I'm not in bad shape.
You got a great diet.
We go out
Thank
whenever we're skating. Ian's sitting there. I'm not Ian. Luke is sitting on the couch with like in his shorts and no shirt on, and he's just like watching.
I'm getting my vitamin D.
Vitamin D is important too. I think
Yeah.
that's Ivan Ortiz says, Tim, is it ethical for the U.S. to draft DACA recipients if they aren't even allowed to vote, but we have to pay taxes and a subscription to keep DACA every 2 years for 500 USD regarding your last vote? I don't know, man. All I know is the draft says that if you're an undocumented immigrant, you have to sign up for it. So like you're here in this country secretly and illegally, but you gotta sign up for military service. Don't you dare. Yeah. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Wyatt Caldenberg says, Kathy, I saw you on Dr. Turley. Your story about your mother and your birth totally changed my views on abortion. I voted for you. You are the first candidate who changed my mind, and I am old.
Oh, good.
All right, let's see. Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says, Kathy, Miss, I live in Harrisburg. I've talked to many black men who think like us, but either don't vote or vote Dem just 'cause. They vote against what they're for. Suggestion on how to change minds.
Yeah, just have a conversation. Just go out and talk to people, right? I mean, I was a Democrat and then I wasn't. And my strategy is really just walking out and talking to people. Black people are not special little unicorns. We want what everyone else wants. Just keep having conversation with people.
Right on. Rat Buttocks, excellent name, says, Tim, I quit smoking so I could afford a super chat every night. Right in Pinkerton 2024.
Well,
Pinkman?
congrats.
Who's Pinkerton?
Be careful when you quit smoking. Your testosterone levels go down after doing so.
Is it because cigarettes make your testosterone go up or what?
No, there's a correlation between also eating and getting away from different habits. There's a lot of different reasons.
Oh, because it's an appetite suppressant. When you remove the suppressant, you eat too much, and then your testosterone drops.
That's one theory out there. Yes.
All right, Brand says, fund a new show, Woke and Lefty. Make it seem like a safe place for a prominent leftist to guest appear on. When they ask hard questions and expose them, would need a believable host. Wow. Well, what we're actually planning on doing is, right now on one of our burners is a Crossfire style show. Now, every time I bring this up, I'm like, wouldn't it be great if we got like two different political worldviews to have a discussion about something like calm and rationally with a moderator? Everyone's like, the left will never come on. And I'm like, you're right. But this is not the kind of show where we need Hassan Piker. No. It's the kind of show where we need like an environmental activist who's working at a local level. And then you get like a petroleum engineer and an environmental activist to sit down and have a conversation with a moderator, someone who's checking the news. And I'm like, I think that actually would work really, really well. Mm-hmm. And it would probably, I think it would work really well. Just simply put, it'd be an excellent business decision. People would love to watch something like that. And it would be good for us culturally to get these people to have these conversations.
I think so. I think people are almost over the epic takedown kind of moments, right? And we're looking for something real and authentic. And I think as life gets a little bit more challenging for people, they're going to be looking for something real. People are going to need hope.
Yeah, I got the idea because we were talking about having like a female skateboarder have a conversation with a trans skateboarder who's competing in female contests, and then actually have them talk to each other about what they're going through and what their issues are. And then you'd have a moderator, and the goal is not to make it a debate or angry, but to have a conversation so that people aren't just talking past each other. And I thought that'd be really interesting. Yeah. But we could do that with a lot of things. Like I mentioned, environmental activist, petroleum engineer, climate change activist being like, we gotta end fossil fuels, petroleum engineer being like, I mean, not only that, someone who works in power plants or with electricity being like, how many people are going to die if we do what you want? Sure. That'll be interesting. All right. Zachary Dempsey says, can't tell you how many times I've brought up a story from IRL while working in a New York City suburb school to coworkers, and they just refuse to even look into it for themselves. It makes me feel crazy. Yeah. But, one thing I would suggest is you can't go up to someone and be like, hey, did you hear X? Like, look at this story here, look it up. You've got to be very subtle and passive with it. Like, let them talk about their interests, and then you interject something like, yeah, I was watching the thing about Biden. The thing about it, I just can't get past the weird, they're doing the child sex change thing, but I don't know about whatever. Yeah, you passively mention these things. You don't need to throw it in their face and be like, read these stories. You
know the story so well that you don't need to reference it to give them a very subtle, shocking statement about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then when they're like, I don't know about that, be like, yeah, I don't know. It was on, what was it on? It was on some, I don't know. I saw some video on Facebook.
I'll send it to you later.
Yeah. And then just you're making sure they're hearing these things. The other thing you can do that I heard is a really good idea, that seems like a great idea, is when someone comes to you and they're talking about this political stuff, challenge them to not watch any mainstream news and just read the bills themselves. Just challenge them to do it. Be like, okay, look, I don't know about these news hosts, but why don't you do this? Don't listen to or watch any news program for say three days or a week, and then read the bills going through Congress, right? And then tell me what you learned.
That is exactly what I do. I download and read their bills. Invariably,
people get red-pilled because they're like, wait a minute. I remember when I worked for Fusion, there was some bill about religious freedom or something. And everyone at the company was saying it did X. And so I was like, cool, we'll put together a story about it. And then we read it and we couldn't figure out how it did what they claimed it did. I can't remember exactly what it was. They said it was like ban gay marriage or something. Yeah. And then I was just like, it doesn't say anything about that in here. And they were like, oh, well, but that's what it does. And then me and this other producer were like, I don't understand what we can even say.
Yeah.
But they wanted us to just say it.
Right.
Yeah.
Just say
it's like
it.
the
I'm
don't
like,
say gay bill. It has nothing to say. It says nothing in there about don't say gay, but they make it about that because it helps them. It's expedient for them,
It's weird. Rory F says, as far as I'm concerned, there's only one ideal 2024 ticket. Trump cash 2024. Maybe Tulsi's having a come to Jesus moment. Maybe she'd be Secretary of Defense. That'd be great. That'd be cool.
Cash Patel?
Yeah.
Is that who this is? Nice.
I tweeted Trump West 2024.
Yeah, great. Would vote.
But who am I referring to?
Cornell? No,
Alan?
Just kidding. Alan is what I thought. Yeah.
Kanye?
Oh, yeah.
You see, I knew that. Like, you assumed it was Alan West?
Yeah. No, first I thought Cornell West. I was just like, who are all the Wests?
And then you thought Alan?
Alan.
A lot of people thought it was Kanye. And I just thought it was funny that I could put West, and it's like, who is it reference to?
Actually, I thought it was Kanye when I saw the tweet. I actually thought that I'd read it, Trump. It was Trump West. I thought for sure you were talking about Kanye in the tweet.
I tweeted a whole bunch of stuff today that confused a lot of people. But it's really funny watching everyone just takes these tweets seriously when they're obviously not serious. But hey, man, I have fun on Twitter. It's really good. I said, people who don't trust the government haven't learned from history.
Spicy.
Luke?
Yep. That's a thought-provoking one.
And then I said something like, the government has, I tweeted, the government has never done anything wrong. All those bad things, that wasn't real government. All right. Guitarist Gabe says, regarding your video, I have a friend who recently swore into the Air Force and said it was weird that the oath is to protect your superiors and not the Constitution, country, or its people. The oath doesn't even mention them. Really? I thought it did. Is that like a new thing, or is that how it's always been in the Air Force? Yeah. Mark Shepcott says, Tim, where to get long-term emergency food? Well, of course, you know that when we do our shout-outs, it's safeandreadymeals.com. That's what we shout out when we do. Henry Back to Play says, not only is Kathy courageous and inspiring, she breaks things down in layman's terms without missing a beat. Bravo.
I like it.
There you go. Grafty says, meatloaf is much like graphene. If done incorrectly, it is much like graphene. If cooked too long, buck. Okay, I have no idea what that means. John Hansen says, how does ESG not violate their fiscal responsibility to their investors? How is that not legal?
It's because they're
not
illegal. They're no longer working with, what do they call it? Shareholder values. They're going for stakeholder capitalism.
Doesn't change the
so
law.
they don't have to make, they're not so concerned with so what happens is BlackRock doesn't care if Exxon is making money for its shareholders. It wants BlackRock or wants Exxon to make money for the stakeholders, the people that are being affected by
You're missing the point. You're missing the point. That is illegal, and that's the point they were making.
illegal in the United States, maybe.
It doesn't matter what these companies' goal is. It matters that their goal is illegal.
In the United States, but
now,
they're not American companies.
The way they...
But they operate in America, then it's a crime.
But now the way they get away with it is that you have these credit rating companies like I think it's MCSI, where they essentially say, okay, well, today you're going to lose money, but we're looking at 20 years, 30 years, 40 years from now, and we are looking through our crystal ball, and the crystal ball says we're going to have these particular laws in place. And when you have these laws in place that forbid fossil fuel, now we come back to the future and say, this is the rating we're going to give you. And so they find the loophole to say, oh, this is long-term investing. So you're going to take a hit today because of these long-term goals that we have. So that's the reason. So that's really how they obfuscate the illegality of it.
Fat Chipmunk says GOP leadership is trying to sabotage legit candidates they can't control. They revoked all their funds from Blake Masters recently.
Absolutely.
That's what they did?
I don't know about Blake Masters, but I can tell you in my race, again, it's what I've said before. What I will continue to say is that we have, when you're in the family, when I'm talking to my children, my husband and I are talking to our kids, we say, listen, when we're out here on the street, mama got your back. I'm going to be right there for you. But when we come home, it's going to be a different story, right? I'm going to take you to task. And it's the same way within the Republican Party. In the family, we got some issues to contend with, and we need to start cleaning house. We have a group within the Republican Party that has nothing. I mean, they're probably Democrats, if anything, but they're definitely a uniparty, and their goals do not match our goal. And they're sabotaging conservatives.
Also, he says, I agree with Serge. I watched the interview this morning and I immediately knew it was an old interview by how much rounder your face was. It threw me initially.
Oh my goodness.
I tried. All right. Zeker Finder says, three cheers for Kathy Barnette. She's right on with the Fed's policy of reducing demand. We get the inflation and lose the jobs and the nuclear holocaust while they get their billionaire bunkers. They got them in New Zealand. You saw the reports about how they're building these exotic resorts out in the middle of nowhere. They got mountain bunkers. They're building missile silo bunkers, property in Montana and Wyoming and Idaho skyrocketing. And now they've got these big $100 million contracts over at Raven Rock. Somebody knows something, and they're getting ready for something, and they ain't telling us. But if you listen to this show, at least you won't be 10 steps behind, only 2. So maybe you can pick up emergency food or something. And I don't know, man, get some chickens. Yeah.
I have a plan with your neighbors. Talk to your neighbors. Talk about worst case scenario. Have contingencies planned. Who's going to have, where's the water? Where's the food going to be? People you trust, obviously.
All right, everybody. If you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and share the show with your friends. Become a member over at timcast.com. We're going to have a members only show coming up for you at about 11 p.m. So you don't want to miss it. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Kathy, do you want to shout anything out?
Yes, please go to Amazon, wherever books are sold. Purchase my book, read it, buy one for a friend. Holidays are coming up. Give it to them, and let's try to red pill some other people. Please go to my website at kathybarnette.com. I've started a new organization called Be Better America. It is going to be funded by you, but the same things that I have always been doing, I'm going to continue to do, which is pushing our values. So please consider donating at kathybarnette.com.
Kathy, thank you so much for coming on. That was a very great conversation. I think I know why Trump did what he did, but I'm going to tell you after the show. Anyway, my YouTube channel is youtube.com/wearechange. I did a very interesting video today about Musk, Ukraine, the crazy statement by the former Joint Chiefs of Staff. I got into all of it. youtube.com/wearechange. That video is up for you right now. See you there.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Kathy. Great to see you. Great to meet.
You.
Good conversation, man.
Yes.
And I know you're a woman, but I called you man anyway. Woman. I'm in dispense.
I thought it was man. Yeah, look, I know what it means to be a woman. So
thanks.
I did not.
Thanks for being cool. Serge, what's up, dog?
Hey guys, thanks very much for the podcast. I really appreciate it, Kathy. It was a great one.
Thank you.
Better than yesterday, I would say. We had a little weird one yesterday, but it was great. Thank you for coming. I'm Serge.com everywhere. Pretty sure you can find me there. Thanks. Take it away, Tim.
Before we go, I have a sad announcement to make for everybody, and we wanted to wait until the very end. A couple nights ago, Roberto Jr.'s mom, Katerina, died in her sleep. We don't know exactly what happened or how, and we had Katerina brought to a vet for, I believe it's called a necropsy, I think. They're trying to determine the cause of death because Katerina, the chicken, was only about just shy of 3 years old. And so that's very young for a chicken. She was sleeping in the normal position, didn't really show any signs that we noticed of distress or sickness. And the next day, she just didn't wake up. And so that's Roberto Jr.'s mom, so it's been really tough on him. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, if there's anything you are wondering about Chicken City, you can email Roberto Jr. at timcast.com, and he will respond to your messages. And we'll figure something out. It is sad because Katerina is one of the original chickens that we got for Chicken City. And, is the mom of Roberto Jr. and a bunch of other babies that eventually, a couple other that were hatched. So
is it Roberto Jr. or Roberto Jr. all one word?
JR. I'm assuming it's JR.
All right. Well, email both just in case, and you'll get through to one.
Yeah. And but he does respond to all of his fans. So Roberto Jr. he's a good host. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all over at timcast.com in about an hour or so. Again, thanks for hanging out.
Cheers, everyone.